Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your Unfiltered Fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and today I have an incredible guest. I've told him that he's like the sane person on social media whenever it comes to health and fitness. I have today Dr. Joey Muñoz, who is a PhD in Nutritional Science and the owner of Fit for Life Academy. And he focuses on helping people lose weight, build muscle, and improve their health in a sustainable way. Welcome, Joey. How are you?
I'm doing great, Nathalia. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited for our conversation because I really resonate with your content. When I was on your podcast as well, I told you that you are one of the few sane people in the fitness industry on social media. So I appreciate that. I'm going to start from the very beginning because
Sure.
I always love hearing these stories on why people got into what they got, especially whenever it comes to health and fitness. What made you pursue nutrition?
Yeah, great question. So I've been, quote unquote, passionate about fitness since I was pretty young. Both of my parents were into working out and living a pretty healthy lifestyle. So I kind of got exposed to the gym and eating healthy and all of that at a pretty young age. Funny enough, I was fairly overweight as a young teenager. Actually, pretty overweight. I was like 2% body fat away from being obese as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it's just because coming from a Spanish household, like it was just eat, right? And I've always been really active doing sports. My mom didn't know much about nutrition. She always had the thought of, if you exercise, you can eat whatever you want, right? Like not really knowing. So I would always have sports practice. And then on the way home, stop at KFC and have like a massive thing of mashed potatoes. I was always drinking like Capri Sun. So I would eat a lot, right? And then my mom started putting me on some pretty strict diets that she learned about from her trainer. And I was pretty much on like zero carbs. My dinner after any sports practice was like a whole rotisserie chicken and that's it.
How old were you then?
It's probably like 13.
Oh my God, I was doing the cabbage soup diet with my mom when I was 12. So yeah.
Right there with you. But I was at least I was getting some protein in.
Facts.
And so, I've always had a passion for like lifting and being in shape. And when I was young, I always wanted to like get super jacked and stuff. And 15 years later, I never got super jacked. But when I started college, I really didn't know what direction I wanted to go into. Funny enough, I originally thought I was going to be a music major because I played the guitar and the saxophone and I was in the marching band playing the saxophone and music was a massive passion of mine. I used to play my instrument like 4 or 5 hours a day after school easily.
Oh, wow.
So it was always like sports and music were my two big things. And I had a conversation with my mom once and she was like, you can pursue music, but you're probably going to be broke the rest of your life. And I was like, that's probably true.
Fair.
So I was like, what else do I like? And so I started as an exercise science major. I'm giving you the whole runaround here. I was a horrible student, got kicked out of the major.
Wait, hold on, stop right there. How the hell did you get kicked out?
I've been a horrible student my whole life until I started like graduate school, seriously. Nathalia, to give you perspective, I was just like very irresponsible. It wasn't that I was not smart or not capable. I was just very irresponsible. And growing up, I grew up in a really strict household. Before college, I never was really allowed to like go out with friends or do stuff. Like my mom was really strict essentially. And I grew up like in a single parent
Cuban,
household with
right?
my mom. Yes. So really strict household. And then when I got to college, I just had complete freedom, right? So I was staying up to like 4 or 5 in the morning pretty much every day, waking up at like 1 p.m. I'm saying this because you asked me how I got kicked out. There was this class that was a required class and it was just pass or fail. It was a once a week hour-long seminar at 8 a.m. on Mondays.
Ooh.
And if you missed it twice, you didn't pass the class. And so I missed it twice, 2 semesters in a row. And so I was told I had to change my major. And I remember just thinking like, well, what's the closest thing to exercise science? I'll go down the nutrition route. I've always really liked cooking as well. So I was like, oh, I'll just study food. And so I went down the nutrition route and then kind of just fell in love with it naturally. I'm really passionate about exercise science too. So just like, I really like both. And when I started taking classes like metabolism courses and physiology courses and biochemistry, I started just naturally liking those things. And I'm somebody who can become really obsessive with something if I like it. And then if I don't like it, I just don't care. So that's why I was a horrible
Same.
student until I started taking classes that challenged me and that I enjoyed. And then I applied for graduate school, got into graduate school, which I was super surprised about. And then the rest is history.
And you're like, me?
Yeah, if you told my high school self that I would be a quote unquote doctor of something, I would just laugh in your face. I'd be like, there is no way.
No, stop it.
No, seriously, I would just like skip class, fail classes in high school. I got into college because I applied for a first generation college student program at Florida State University. I got accepted. I didn't have any sort of like GPA, or I always did well in tests and stuff like that. I just had really poor academic standings. So the requirements for that program were lower. So I got in. And then finishing up my undergrad to get into graduate school, I didn't have the GPA to get into graduate school. But there was this one professor, he was like the professor for a food science class, and it was considered the hardest class in our major. And I was doing, like, I had the best performance in that class. So I had a good relationship with this professor. And I was like, if there's any way you could vouch for me to get into graduate school, it would be great because you know that I'm capable of doing this. And so he vouched for me. And so I got into graduate school. And
That's awesome.
from graduate school on, I was just a good student because I liked what I was doing.
I think it's cool to also to see how like the more hyper specific that you become on the things. Like I was not a great student either. I had the classes that I liked in school, and then anything after that, I was like a terror. But if you put me to do anything related to fitness or nutrition and health and things like that, oh, you better believe that I can be there for 10 hours and it feels like a minute.
Yeah, same here.
Because you have a 2-year-old and your wife just had a baby very recently. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you feel that becoming a parent has changed how you navigate fitness? Because I can think myself, my kids are fairly close in age like yours. They're 14 months apart. How has it changed how you navigate your own fitness and how you navigate your coaching?
It's definitely difficult, right? I mean, I think this is something we talked about when you came on my show too. Like, there are sacrifices that need to be made. My life literally revolves around going to the gym, working, and then being with family. I don't really do much else. I don't really hang out with friends much, maybe once or twice a month for like grabbing lunch or something like that. I don't really have much time to like watch shows. I might watch like 30 or 40 minutes of something at the end of the day. I'm the person that starts a show and like pauses it halfway through an episode because I got to go to sleep and get my rest, right?
Oh my God, how do you do that? So just a side note here, not to interrupt you, but I have a policy for myself. I will not start any series that has more than 3 seasons because I know that I'll be like, challenge accepted, bitches. And I will literally watch the whole thing on the weekend and I don't care what else is going on. So
No.
I don't know how you do that. That is like,
That's funny.
Beautiful.
So my wife and I were just watching a game show and it was like the final episode and it's a 60-minute episode, and 40 minutes in, it was like my bedtime and I paused it. I'm like, we finish this tomorrow. And she was like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, no, we're not watching this right now.
Oh my God, I'll kill you. I'm with your wife there.
Yeah, that was her exact reaction. But pretty much just like I've chosen to prioritize the things that I value in life right now. I'm a big believer in delayed gratification. Like, let's be honest, Nathalia, and maybe you relate to some of these thoughts or not, but like, you know, my life has changed a lot over the past 2 years, a lot over the past 3 months, a lot since my business has been growing as well. Like, I dedicate more time to work. Like with one kid, it's easy, right? Mom watches, I can go do something. With 2, it's a completely different ballgame. And sometimes I feel like, I'm like, man, I don't have a life. I don't have friends. I feel lonely. Like I want to be able to do other things, but like I bring myself back and like think like I'm doing these things for a reason, right? And the sacrifices that I'm making now will be worth it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, within 5 to 10 years from now, right? But I have chosen essentially to sacrifice the other things because sometimes, you know, before having kids, I was still dedicated to the gym. I was still dedicated to my job, but I would go out with friends a lot more. I did a lot more things on the weekend. I had more time to watch my shows or play video games or do whatever I want, right? And essentially, I have chosen to sacrifice those things. And that's a personal choice. Everybody makes their own choices. But if you want to prioritize your fitness, it needs to come before all of those other things. So that's how I've been managing it as of recently. I also, truthfully, have dropped down my training frequency. And I think we talked about this too. I was training like 5 days a week and I dropped it down to 3, not because of time, because I could go to the gym 5 times a week if I wanted to, simply because with a newborn and with a 2-year-old, I'm not sleeping that well. I've been pretty stressed with work and stuff too. So like my recovery has been pretty crappy. And so when I was training 5 days a week, if I was doing back-to-back sessions like 2 or 3 days in a row, I was just really fatigued and like performance wasn't there. My mind wasn't in the gym. I was just like, I just want to get through this. And so I've been just training 3 days per week, full body, and the intensity is better. I can recover better. So that's kind of how I've been managing it personally.
There's so many things that you said there. Like, I never looked at it this way, but whenever you say it, I'm like, yes. You know, when you do something and you don't know how to put into words, and I think that you
Sure.
literally just put it into words. What I find that a lot of people do is that, for example, they have the 24 hours in a day, and then they want to keep doing everything that they did before,
Yeah.
and then add on the responsibility of children and all the extracurricular activities, which you're not there yet, but it's coming. And, you know, you become a snack bitch, and then you're the chauffeur and you have to take here and you have to take there. But they also want to add on top of that their fitness, because now they decided to lose weight, but they're still holding on to everything that they were doing before, that not only from a time perspective, but also from an action perspective, it doesn't align with the ultimate goal. Because if you want to be present for your kids, you also need to be rested. If you want to be present for your workouts, you need to be rested. But if you're committing to, 27,000 birthday parties every single weekend, in
Yeah.
addition to working 70 hours a week, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that.
My hack has been, Natalia, I've just gotten a couple of new friends who have kids. And so if I'm alone with the kids, I'll just tell a friend of mine to come over with their kids. And at least I get some socialization that way. I'm not a complete loner, I promise.
Oh yeah. I enjoy my own company. I went to a networking event recently, and I would consider myself a fairly like extroverted person, but I went to a networking event that I didn't know many people, and I wanted to go back home so quick. But it was good to get me out of my comfort zone. But anyway,
Yeah.
now let's get a little bit into the fitness side of things, because you have the yellow glass content that literally kills me every time. How problematic do you think the overcomplication of fitness with like these splitting hairs over the dyes and the seed oil and the organic, which, there might be some evidence that it can be somewhat beneficial to health. But I think that focusing on a minutia that a lot of times doesn't move the needle a lot, but then people get caught up on that overcomplication, which then for coaches like ourselves that are more focused on that long-term sustainable success, it's almost like you're fighting that battle with a new client whenever you have that person that you give something that is simple, straightforward. Like, oh, what about the seed oils? Like, don't give a shit. Like, let's lose the weight first. So how problematic do you see this being, the misinformation or the overcomplication of fitness?
Yeah, I think the main issue is confusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
More than even like complication, because people are just confused. And they're like, what do I really need to focus on? I think it
Mm-hmm.
increases the barrier of entry. I think people inherently know what they need to do to be healthy, right, Natalia? If you ask anybody, what are 1 or 2 things you could probably do to be a little bit healthier if you're not happy with where you are at the moment? Most people know they probably got to walk a little bit more, maybe get some workouts in
Mm-hmm.
regularly, not skip the gym, like eat a little bit healthier. Everybody has a pretty good idea of what eating healthy is like. But then they get so hyperfixated on these small little variables. I do think there is a downside in the fact that it makes people confused in terms of what to focus on. I also think, Natalia, and this might be a little bit of a controversial take within the general population, that sometimes people use it as a little bit of an excuse. I think as an excuse of like why they're not focusing on the things they should as well.
Because it removes agency.
And I bring this up because I've had this conversation with clients where they say it's because there are other areas of their life that are difficult to address, right? I have one perfect story here that I remember having this conversation with a client where her health and fitness was like truly a priority to her, but she was really struggling to make progress, particularly on the nutrition side. And this is a person who naturally is a big people pleaser. So she has a hard time saying no to everything. She works way more than she has to. She does absolutely everything for her entire family, doesn't seem to have much support from her family. Like, she does everything. So she has very little time for herself. And we had conversations around setting boundaries around this, around that. And she's like, yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Eventually had a hard time doing those things. And again, her biggest struggle was really nutrition. And I would ask her, what's the struggle with the nutrition piece? Because we're trying to make it as simple as possible. And she's like, well, I see all this information around organic and seed oils and this and that. I'm like, but we had this conversation. That doesn't matter. Like, just focus on these things, right? So sometimes, like you mentioned, it removes agency. It's an easy way to focus on things that really don't matter. It's a way to prolong really taking
Ownership.
Yeah. But I see both sides, right? Because I do think there's so much confusion with a lot of these things. And I also think, Nathalia, some people really do think that if they eat organic and remove seed oils, that it's going to help them lose weight. You and I both know that it's not going to do anything for something like weight loss.
Yeah, and I think that even from a health perspective as well, for, whenever you're looking at the latest CDC data,
Sure.
about 73% of the US population is either overweight or obese.
Yeah.
73%. Let's sit on that for a second. That is like, what, 3/4 of the population is overweight or obese. And I'm remembering a particular story that we had somebody come to us and they're like, oh, I'm really worried about, like, I need this anti-inflammatory diet, blah, blah, blah. But this is someone who is, about 80 pounds overweight. I'm like, anti-inflammatory food items is not the list of priority right now, because being 80 pounds overweight is a lot more inflammatory than anti-inflammatory foods that you're trying to eat.
Yeah, I think there's two big things to talk about here that tie into each other. One is that when it comes to health, a lot of things really matter. But one thing that we need to think about is effect size. Simply meaning, how big of an effect does something have on your health? Because when we talk about things like, I don't know, food dyes or particular contaminants in the air or heavy metals in our water, like, those things are true. Are there potential negative impacts? Of course. The question is, how much of an impact, though? And relative to other things that you have a lot more control over, it's a very, very minimal impact.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to recognize that the number one determinant of your health is your body composition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, like, to be healthy, you have to be a bodybuilder. That's not what we're talking about. But it's really about the ratio between muscle mass and fat mass. And if you have excess body fat, that itself causes more negative health effects than anything else. And as you mentioned, a big part of it is due to chronic low-grade inflammation. I'll get a little bit sciencey here so people understand why, because when I say that, they're like, why, right? Because even the healthy at every size movement, there's so much that we could talk about there. It's like, how do you define health, right? Because you objectively cannot be healthy at every size, right? There is a certain point where excess adiposity, excess body fat is detrimental to your health. And I think it's difficult sometimes for some people to accept this or talk about these things because it's something that people are bullied about, right? There's a stigma with people having extra weight. They feel bad about it. But nobody would deny that smoking cigarettes is bad for your health, right? It's just objectively true. We don't have to bully people or be mean to people because of the way they look or the fact they have excess body fat. But it's also not fair to say that, like, you could be any size and be healthy, because it's objectively not true. So when you have excess body fat, what people need to understand is that fat itself is an endocrine organ. It releases hormones. It has an effect on your overall physiology. When you have excess fat, the things that your fat secretes changes, right? So essentially, when we have more body fat, there is less blood supply to all the fat tissue, all the fat cells. So they are in what's called a hypoxic environment, which just means low oxygen availability. When there's low oxygen availability, the fat cells secrete different things, okay? And essentially, they become more pro-inflammatory. They secrete inflammatory molecules, things like interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, things some people have probably never heard of, and some have maybe heard of one or two of those things. Inflammation, by the way, guys, does not mean swelling or bloating.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Let me finish this one thought really quick.
Okay.
Because it's this increase in these molecules, which is what we call low-grade chronic inflammation, that seems to be at least one of the main contributing factors to things like cardiovascular disease and arthritis and bone loss and insulin resistance, right? So if you simply can reduce the amount of body fat that you have, within healthy levels. We're not talking about being super ripped here at all, because having very low body fat can also have detrimental effects on health. But reducing your body fat within healthy levels, and then increasing muscle mass within healthy levels as well, because muscle has the opposite effect on a lot of these things, right? Improves insulin resistance, reduces risk of cardiovascular disease. That's the number one thing you can do to improve your health. And this then ties into the second thing, which I was going to talk about, which is like processed food and all this stuff. People are like, processed food causes disease because of all of these ingredients and these dyes. And look at the relationship between processed food consumption and refined sugar. It's like, yes, there's a relationship there. I would also argue that it's causal, but it's not
Yep.
because of the reasons that you're saying it is, right? You might have seen the realize I did on this recently where Mike Israetel was talking about this. It's like, these foods are designed to be as enjoyable as possible. And it's not that
Mm-hmm.
the food companies are evil, it is capitalism. If I can
Mm-hmm.
design a better product than you that people are going to buy, I'm going to design a better
Mm-hmm.
product, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just capitalism. And so over the years, the foods become more irresistible, harder to put down. They don't provide much
Mm-hmm.
nutritional value. They don't really keep you full, and they're really calorically dense.
And they're more readily available. I would add to that
Yeah,
as well.
they're cheap, super shelf stable. Man, it's easy. Like a bag of chips, you could eat that in 5
Oh
minutes.
yeah.
Easy.
Oh yeah.
And that's over 1,000 calories. And then people are like, calories don't matter. It's the ingredients. Like,
Mm-mm.
how can you say that when you just downed 1,000 calories of chips
Yep.
in 5 minutes and it's not going to do anything to keep you full?
Yeah.
Right. So it's the combination of hyperpalatable foods causing people to overeat. We also live very sedentary lifestyles, right? Like, I can click my phone and have food at my door. I sit at this desk all day, like
Mm-hmm.
low energy expenditure, high energy intake,
Yep.
causes weight gain, and then the weight gain causes the negative health outcomes. It's that simple. You were going to mention something though.
I am. Can we just kind of like take back to what you were talking about? Because if I got $1 for every time that somebody told me that they have inflammation because they're bloated, I would be in a yacht in the Mediterranean drinking champagne off the coast of Monaco. So can you tell me, like, whenever you say that bloating and swelling is not necessarily a sign of inflammation, can you elaborate on that? What would be a sign of inflammation?
So, swelling can be a symptom of inflammation, right? Like if you cut your
Mm-hmm.
hand, there's going to be inflammation and there's going to be swelling. So, swelling occurs because of inflammation. Swelling is not
Mm-hmm.
inflammation. Inflammation is literally an immune response. That's all it is. Your immune system secretes molecules that have inflammatory properties. Inflammation is an important process of returning to homeostasis, which just means balance, right? So if you are sick, if you have a bacterial infection, if you have an injury, there's an inflammatory response to help heal the injured tissue. Okay, you can have an inflammatory response to food as well if you're allergic to a food, for example. But if you're just like bloated or something like that, it's usually due to like gas production or indigestion. Like it really
Yeah.
doesn't have to do anything with inflammation.
Or you just gained weight.
Yeah.
And I saw this all the time in like when I was in the bodybuilding industry. People are like, I'm holding water. I'm like, no, honey, you're not.
Yeah. That's,
Stop
yeah.
it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean this to be mean because I have been one of those people. It's water. No, it's not. Like now I just want to slap myself and be
Yeah.
like, you wasn't water.
Well, that's also different than because a lot of times people will eat something and they are sensitive to a food and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm bloated. This food's causing inflammation. There's a little bit of truth to that, but like you might just have a sensitivity to a particular food, and it's probably a good idea to remove that food from your diet. But it doesn't mean that that food is inflammatory, right? It just means that
Mm-hmm.
you are sensitive to that specific food. And we see this all the time when people talk about like gluten or this or that. It's like, yeah, you might be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
sensitive to it. That doesn't mean that everybody is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Could go so many directions here. But I love when you mention about the reduction of movement, being more sedentary and things like that. And a lot of the ladies that I work with are 35, 40, 50s, even some 60s. And it never fails. That's another thing that if I every time I heard I got $1, I would be in the yacht in the Mediterranean drinking champagne. It's like, oh, I can't lose weight because of my age. So, what does the research say
Yeah.
about the impact of aging, just like alone, the aging process in the ability to lose weight or gain fat? Like,
Sure.
what does that look like?
Oh, so much to talk about here. Okay. There's a really great study showing that when you control for muscle mass, okay, because we know that muscle mass is a big predictor of your metabolic rate. When you control for muscle mass, your age has no impact on your metabolic rate until you're like 70 something. So essentially, what does that mean? If you are in your 60s and you compare yourself to somebody who is in their 40s, who is the same height, let's say it's you, identical, and you have the same muscle mass. I keep bringing up this caveat because I'm going to explain why in a second. You have literally the same metabolic rate, right? And metabolic rate is not synonymous with energy expenditure. Because I see all the time, Nathalia, and this is, I think, why so many people like think they need to eat 1,200 calories. Because they do a BMR test and their BMR is 1,200. They're like, I need to eat less than that. And it's like, your BMR is just part of your energy expenditure. It's not all energy expenditure. Anyways, completely different topic. But the downside of aging is that if you don't resistance train, you lose a lot of muscle, right? I think the stat is like 3 to 5% of muscle mass per year after the age of 40 or something like that. It's pretty drastic.
Yep.
Hey, if you haven't been lifting weights and you're in your 60s, yeah, it probably feels a lot easier to gain fat because you have way less muscle than when you were 30 or even 40. And yeah, your metabolic rate is lower, but it's not because of aging. It's because of your sedentary lifestyle. And there is no science showing that it's too late to build muscle. Funny enough, you were saying you have clients in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Side note here, I always tend to follow people that are like my general age, 30, 40s, like, because that's the type of stuff that I'm interested in. And I always thought that my following would be the same. And like the vast majority of my followers are like 50s, 60s, especially like women. All of my followers are like late 50s, 60s. And
they be creeping.
well, you know what I think it is too, Nathalia, is that like so many people in the fitness space are really talking to people who want to be like into fitness 100%. And my content is more lifestyle related, so it probably attracts that type of person more too. But we have a lot of clients who are in their 60s. More and more over time, as I like shift towards talking more about lifestyle and health, we get more people in their 60s, and it's cool because it's like, I'm in my 60s and I just want to build muscle and be healthy for the next 20 or 30 years. I'm like, that's badass. And there's nothing stopping you from building muscle in your 60s. Objectively, will your rate of progress be slower? Yeah, right? You just don't build as muscle as easy in your 60s. But if you've never really been into lifting and you start lifting in your 60s and you start focusing on eating more protein and sleeping a little bit better and not trying to diet super hard, but actually nourishing your body, you can get pretty damn jacked in your 60s.
Yeah. So basically what I'm hearing from you is that the problem is not the aging, is the reduction. And, whenever we're looking, probably now with a lot more studies being done around this, and including men and women in more recent times, which probably for a long time that wasn't the case, you also have the effect of menopause and perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, the hormonal changes and all of that do come with the territory. But there is still the correlation between activity and food consumption. And what I find, in perimenopausal, it is real. Like as a 41-year-old woman, I get it.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of times people are removing agency of what they can do when these other things are out of control. And I think that that's kind of one of the big pieces of the puzzle that people are missing.
Well, listen, of course, hormonal health is important. And some women go through menopause and they're fine. And some women go through menopause and also develop things like hypothyroidism or PCOS or other complications. And those things obviously play a role. And if you, go through menopause and now you're not producing sufficient thyroid hormone as well, like get medical intervention and like work on those things. But again, those are exceptions, not necessarily the rule, because not everybody experiences that. Now, one thing that we do see, though, specifically in women going through menopause, is that it doesn't inherently result in weight gain, but there is a redistribution of how your body stores fat, right? With the loss of estrogen, there does seem to be less fat storage around the hips, the legs, and perhaps more fat storage around the midsection, which changes the body shape from like what people call pear shaped to like apple shaped or whatever.
Yeah.
And you hear like women say like, I haven't really gained much weight, but I have all this body fat around my midsection now. And I think part of it, Nathalia, is accepting that as we age, we change, right? Like, I'm not saying you have to be okay with gaining 20 pounds of body fat, but do understand that, hey, you're not going to look the same in your 50s than in your 30s. You can still look amazing. You can still be in great shape. But I think there's a big problem, Nathalia, with people comparing themselves to where they were 10, 15, 20 years down the road. It's like, you're just not that person anymore, right? And I think it's important to be able to accept those changes as we age as well.
I agree with this so much. And that is kind of the message that should be talked about, but not with a defeated mindset, because that's another thing. I think even as we become parents, there is this idea that is like, oh, just because you have kids now, yeah, that's it. And the acceptance of it. Oh, yeah, I have kids now. So, I'm just going to not do what I can do. No, my body might have changed. My reality might have changed, but I'm going to do what I can with what I have.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a big beef with this because I'm going to rephrase it with this, and I want to hear where you stand on this. You have elite professional athletes, coaches giving advice to the general population.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking of one particular case that I experienced that a husband of a client of mine went to this guy who works a lot with professional athletes, and he gave a plan to this guy who is, that bad, doesn't have that kind of time, runs his own business. And it is the same plan that he gives elite professional athlete whose job is to perform and look X, Y, and Z. So how does someone getting this content that it is target to the 1% that is once you move the needle by 1%, how can someone filter the information that is applicable to them and what is not?
Yeah. And when you say program, you're talking specifically about training program, I'm assuming?
Training, nutrition,
Yeah.
like, that diet that has 27 ingredients and one of them was like this pepper that needs to be bought from this specific store. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, to answer the last question, like, how do you filter for it? It's pretty simple. Like, find somebody who works with the type of person that you are. Like, it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to say that because I try to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's experiencing that. And it's like, oh, this guy works with professional athletes.
Yes.
He must be amazing. It's like, I want to be like the professional athlete. And I forget who said this quote first. It doesn't even matter. But it's like, people envy the outcome of other people and like, they don't think about the process to get there. And it's like, it's a total package. You can't have the outcome without the process. And I've even said this about myself. Like, I definitely objectively was in much better shape than I am now, probably like 5-6 years ago. Right? Like, I had a six pack and stuff. I don't necessarily have a six pack anymore. I'm talking about it. It's like, I'm fine with that because I don't live that lifestyle anymore. And I'm going in a different direction here with this question anyways. But it's like, the whole thing needs to be there. It's like, if you want to look a certain way and it's looking a certain way that's considered pretty elite, like, understand the majority of your life is going to revolve around fitness. And if it can't revolve around fitness, then you're not going to look that way. Unless you're some genetic freak, right? Like, some people go out and party and barely sleep and stuff and like they look amazing. And it's like, you won the lottery, right? Or you're lying about not using performance enhancing drugs, one or the other.
Yeah, I feel this because we work with a lot of ladies that maybe used to compete and now they kind of go back to the contest prep coach that they used now that they are working 70 hours a week and have a bunch of kids and are ascending their careers and they don't understand why it's not working. And I'm like, you're not the same person.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with one thing or the other, but we just, I think, need to look at the reality of each individual.
Well, I think it comes from a couple of things. I think the internet distorts what a good physique even is, right? Because, man, like, I know I'm not the most jacked guy, but I've been training hard for 15 years and people will literally tell me online that it looks like I've never even stepped in a gym. And I'm like, that's crazy. I've been going to the gym regularly for 15 years. I know I don't have the best genetics, but I train hard and I definitely look like I work out and I have muscle and I'm strong. But people have this crazy idea of what's actually achievable because of what they see on social media every day. And there's such a fine line here because we could also go to what you were saying earlier about like normalizing, like not being in shape or whatever, or being overweight. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But people significantly underestimate how much work it takes to get like decently in shape.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're training, this is going to maybe make a lot of people sad. But if you're starting to train and you're training 3 days a week or 4 days a week and you just have an hour to go to the gym, and that's like the totality of your exercise, it's going to take at least 5 years to look like you somewhat lift. And when I say like you somewhat lift, to like have defined muscles and people be like, oh, you go to the gym, right? Especially if you have like average genetics, because genetics play a huge role and people don't want to admit that. It's like, hey, everybody admits your eye color is genetic, your skin color is genetic, your height's genetic. Like so many things are obviously influenced by genetics, including your propensity to build muscle and look a certain way. But when it comes to like the fitness stuff, obviously it's all marketing, but people just want to talk about how hard you work. And that's not necessarily true either. So I don't even know where I'm going with this, but there's a lot to talk about.
It does require work. I agree 100% with you. I think that the caveat that we need to put is that I see a lot of people holding on. And that's me going in the other extreme. I hear what you're saying and I agree 100%. I just want to open a caveat because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just my genetics, so they do nothing.
Of course, yeah.
I always go to that extreme because that's what I see a lot. So it's my bias is speaking. So I apologize.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's not even necessarily genetics. It's just, you just haven't been doing it long enough.
Yeah.
Like it takes a long time to build a muscular body, right? And when I say this, Nathalia, I'm saying it in reference to what people want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
I started lifting when I was like 15, 16, not really knowing what I was doing, but I would go into the gym and like throw weights around and be there for like an hour, hour and a half. And then when I was a freshman in college and I started learning a little bit more about training and watching a lot of YouTube and stuff, I was like, okay, by my sophomore year, in a year from now, I'm going to be super jacked. And like sophomore year came around, I'm like, okay, it takes a little bit longer than I thought. By my senior year, and by my senior year, I had a little more muscle, but I was like, oh, okay, like this takes really long. It's like, if you're just starting off, and I don't want this to discourage people, it's like in a year, you can look really good, especially if you have a little bit of excess fat. Most people just want to be a little bit leaner. But you know, there's a lot of people, Nathalia, who are pretty lean and like they're not overweight by any means. And they're like, I really want to gain muscle. And they think they're going to do it in a couple months or a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to look like their favorite fitness person who is maybe on steroids, has amazing genetics, has been training for 20 plus years. And they see them, they're like, oh, I'm going to be there in a year. And it's like, you're not even going to be close to that in a year. You know, it's,
I've been training since I was 14. I'm 41. So that's 27 years lifting weights.
Yeah, exactly. It just takes a long time. And that's not to discourage people because.
But it's setting expectations.
Yeah. Even though for a lot of people, like they start off because they want to look better and the physical appearance is really important. I do think it's really important to acknowledge like all the other benefits of being healthy, which is hard to focus on sometimes.
So with that, because I've heard you speak, I listened to a few of the podcasts that you've done, that you've been on. And what does the research say about building muscle and losing fat at the same time for the general population? Again, we're talking about, 73% of America being obese or severely overweight.
Yeah.
So what does the research say for the majority of people?
Yeah. Super, super doable. You may not be able to optimize one or the other. The same way you can't be like, I think this will paint the picture. It's like, can you get better at running and can you get better at lifting at the same time? Yeah. Can you be like elite marathon runner and a bodybuilder at the same time? No.
Mm-hmm.
So can you like optimize getting super lean and shredded and then also super jacked at the same time? No. But most people, that's not what they're looking for, right? They're just looking for some slow improvements in body composition. If general population hasn't been training super regularly, is overweight, you can definitely do both at the same time. As long as you're not starving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. You have to create an optimal environment for muscle growth. So if you're going to be losing body fat, be in a slight deficit, maybe losing about a pound a week. And people will say like, that's so slow. It's like,
that's 52 pounds in a year.
Exactly. It's funny because the people that say that, Nathalia, are the people that lose 20 pounds in like 2 months. And then 2 months later, they're up to 20 pounds again. They've done that for 10 years. It's like, hey, how about you just take 1 year and just do it slow and then you're done.
Yep.
Anyways, if you lose weight at a slow rate, so you're just in a slight calorie deficit, you're not going to be depriving yourself of nutrients. So you're still going to be eating sufficiently to recover from training, to stimulate muscle growth. If you're focusing on your protein, if you get better sleep, if you minimize alcohol intake, and you start learning how to train correctly, because the training is obviously the most important part for stimulating muscle growth, you can build a ton of muscle and lose body fat at the same time. And it's as simple as just like asking yourself, am I getting stronger in the gym? I mean, those things go hand in hand. Unless you're a complete beginner and you are learning how to do exercises correctly, and there's a big neurological component there. If you're slowly losing a little bit of body fat and you're slowly getting a little bit stronger, you're losing fat and building muscle at the same time. Now, I think you can only do that to a certain point, but I feel like that certain point is a lot further than what most people think. You see people who are like, they say they go to the gym 4 times a week, but like every other week they skip a workout or 2. So they're really going to the gym maybe 2.5 times a week. And they're probably like 20 pounds overweight. And they're like, should I cut or bulk? It's like, yo, you're asking the wrong question. You
Yes.
should consistently go to the gym and improve your lifestyle and like forget about cutting or bulking. Like your body composition is just going to improve.
Oh my God. So that was what I was going to
Yeah.
say, because honestly, that's what I had circled here. And if you're not watching the video, I'm literally like flopping my arms like a crazy person in my pink sweater, because I feel like people overestimate their level of expertise and they associate going to the gym inconsistently for an extended period of time with expertise. But it's funny because we have a professional golfer that works with us on body composition.
Okay.
And whenever I was talking with her, I use analogy. I'm like, imagine that I go to the range every single day and I'm practicing my god awful swing. And I do that for 10 years solid. Am I going to get better at my swing? And she's like, no, it's going to still be shit. And I was like, that's exactly the same thing, just because you have been going to the gym or doing X, Y, and Z. So I feel like there is, oh, I was an athlete in college. And I'm like, yeah, but you've been out of college for like 25 years. Stop it.
Also, not even like if you went to the range and practice. What if you just went to the range and fucked around with your friends? Because that's what a lot of people do. It's like they go to the gym, they're on their phone between sets. You look at the intent, like, I'm sure you experience this. When I talk to a client who wants to work with us, like, do you have experience with training? Yeah, I've been going to the gym for the past couple of years. Are you pretty confident in your effectiveness of training? Yeah, for sure. I know what I'm doing. Okay, cool. I'm not going to question it. Let's start working together. Send me some videos. It's like they do a set of 10, partial range of motion. It looks like they barely breathe hard at all. And like the last rep is just as fast as the first one. It's like, okay, we have a lot to work on here, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, Nathalia, a lot of people have experiences working with personal trainers, and the vast majority of personal trainers suck. Like, it's just the truth. I go to the gym, Nathalia, and it's hard to like bite my tongue because I see this and I feel bad for the people wasting their money. It's like they are working with a personal trainer and the personal trainer is having a conversation with them while they're doing their set. It's like,
or looking at their phones.
You're not getting any effectiveness out of your training. You're not building any muscle. Because if you are doing a hard set, that is going to be an effective set that is going to stimulate muscle. From the first rep, you cannot talk.
Oh, 100%.
If you're doing a set of 10 on something like any compound movement, and the first rep, you're not like, fuck, this is hard, let me focus. It's not hard enough. If you're doing an exercise and you're talking to somebody, like, it's not hard enough.
Or scrolling through your phone. I see this all the time. Somebody sitting on the leg extension is scrolling through their phone as they're moving their legs. And then they're like, I don't understand. I've been going to the gym for like 3 years and I'm not getting results. And I'm like, and let's open a caveat. That's great that people are making it to the gym. Love that for you.
Of course.
That's great.
Yeah.
But, I've had teeth for 40 years of my life. That doesn't make me a fucking dentist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same.
It's good for your health. Like, hey, you're going to the gym, you're moving stuff around. That definitely has a positive impact for your health. Even if you're talking to somebody, like, good, you're socializing. But it's not effective for improving your body composition to the degree that you want to improve it to. That's the thing. It's like, it's really damn hard. It's the same as like taking a college class. Let's say you're taking a chemistry class and you go to class and like you're texting your friend the whole time or talking to your neighbor and like you're cracking jokes and like you're not paying attention. Are you going to say you're good at chemistry? Because you've been going to class every day. It doesn't matter if you go to class every day, right? It doesn't matter if you like even go to the library and quote unquote study. You're just chilling. You're not actually engaging and putting your focus towards the activity. And the truth is, if you want to be good at anything, it requires 100% undivided attention when you're doing that thing. Focus, intensity for anything. And people could probably relate to this because most people are probably dedicated or have been dedicated to at least one thing in their life. And they would probably say like, I'm good at this one thing. Think about how much time, effort, sacrifice it required you to be good at that one thing and now apply it to lifting, right? And I would say lifting is a lot harder than a lot of other things. So maybe multiply that by 2 or 3. Like that's the degree of focus that's really necessary to build muscle. And this shouldn't be discouraging. It should be exciting because if you feel like you haven't been seeing results, there are some things that like really quick fixes that you can make to start improving the effectiveness of your training.
100%. And I have been very outspoken about group classes. And before we talk about it, I, again, reinforcing, especially in a population of 73% of people being overweight or obese, anything is better than nothing. But what I'm finding is that people are expecting specific results from a very generic approach. And, I would speak with someone and they're like, well, I want to build some muscle. I'm like, right, what are you doing? They're like, well, I'm doing like my Peloton twice a week. And then I am doing F45 or Orange Theory or whatever lifetime class they have. But I don't understand. And you said just because you're lifting weights, it doesn't mean you're lifting for muscle growth.
Yeah.
So can we talk why boot camps are so ineffective for those that want to tone up?
Yeah, it's just not hypertrophy training, right? I like analogies because they paint a picture. It's like saying you want to be a soccer player, but you go do basketball practice and you're like, I'm not getting
Mm-hmm.
better at soccer. It's like, yeah, because you're playing basketball. Like,
Yep.
basketball doesn't get you better at soccer. It's good for your health. You're moving around, you're running, you're socializing with your friends, but you're not going to get better at soccer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. It's like you're exercising in a way that doesn't improve the thing you're trying to improve. It would also be the same, Natalia, as like saying like, I want to be a marathon runner and you're lifting weights. It's like, yeah, lifting weights is not going to get you better at running marathons, right? So if you want to build muscle, you have to train in a way that's specific to building muscle. And people think that lifting weights is analogous with building muscle, and it's not. You could do cardio with weights. Like I could grab a 2-pound dumbbell and do 500 reps of a chest press. That's cardio. That's not going to grow my chest much unless you're
Mm-hmm.
a complete beginner, in which cardio will grow some muscle because it's a stimulus, but it's not going to get you to grow substantial muscle. So maybe we could go into like some of the specifics of muscle growth if you want to talk about that. Because I see the biggest mistake, Natalia, is that people focus on like, I need a better program. It's like the program doesn't matter much. It's more about how you actually execute the exercises. And if you're not executing the exercises correctly, focus on that first and then worry about programming. Because the truth is, if you train correctly, pretty much any program is going to be pretty effective. And then you can get into like
Mm-hmm.
nuances of programming once you're training hard and effectively.
I saw something that Jordan Sayat posted the other day. I took a screenshot because I knew that we were going to have this conversation. And I feel like Jordan and you have very similar kind of like sane approaches to things.
I like Jordan a lot.
Yeah, he's a solid dude because he was like obsession with optimal lifting techniques on the angle, and it's like 43 degrees to the right and to the left. And I don't think that that's what you're mentioning. You're mentioning more the intensity of it and how hard you're pushing yourself. So just not to be confused with,
Yeah.
obsessing over like the half an angle off
Yeah.
of your elbow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm talking about quality of exercise, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, making sure you standardize your reps. Natalia, you and I both know the person who the first rep of a set is full range of motion and the last rep is like a little bit. And you see this in squats a lot, where it's like you're fresh on a set, you can do full range of motion on your first rep, and then you do another 10 reps and your last rep is barely to parallel. It's like you need to
Mm-hmm.
standardize your reps. All your reps should be through a full range of motion because you need to stretch muscles under load. But if you're not training with a full range of motion, you're probably not training as effectively as possible. So first, standardize your range of motion, maximize range of motion on all exercises. 2, don't use momentum, right? Really control weights throughout the negative. Pause movements when the muscle is stretched. Contract explosively. Push at least with near failure. Don't leave more than like 2 reps left in the tank. Don't rest 60 seconds. Rest 3 to 4 minutes
Mm-hmm.
between sets. Like all of these things that contribute to the quality and intensity of the training. Because like just because you do 3 sets of squats doesn't mean it was 3 effective sets, right?
Yeah.
And we want to squeeze as much as we can out of all the work that we're doing so that it's actually effective. And then I would say worry about like, do you do a push-pull legs or upper lower or do this exercise or that exercise? Like those things don't matter nearly as much. And if you're a beginner, I would also say focus the majority of your time on big compound movements and learn how to do those correctly because you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck there too.
You know what it is that cracks me up, and this is no shade on anybody, but we'll send a program that doesn't have all the Cirque du Soleil stuff that Instagram makes you believe that you need in order to get you where you want to be physically. And we've had in the past, it hasn't happened because like our client base, it's amazing and they are very coachable. But there have been in the past where it's like, I'm too advanced for this. I'm like, I've been lifting for 27 years. I promise you, you're never going to be too advanced for a squat or for a deadlift or for
Yeah.
a pull.
And you know what's funny? So in terms of complexity of training, it goes beginner, super simple. And then people think they are advanced, so they make it really complicated. And the people that are really advanced actually have super basic programming. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's super simple. And then maybe a little bit of complexity in areas where they're lagging and they put a little bit more volume there, but it's not complicated at all. Like you were in the bodybuilding world. I'm sure you're probably familiar with Ramy Hambod, trainer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I made a reaction to one of his videos. I actually did not know who he was. I learned who he was afterwards. And it's a video of him training this young guy, probably in his 20s, if this kid was not on performance enhancing drugs, he is like cream of the crop genetics because he was absolutely jacked for like a 21-year-old. That's another thing. If you're like early 20s and you're jacked, a good indicator that the person's probably on performing enhancing drugs because it takes a really long time to get super jacked, right? And that's
Yeah.
why we see a lot of bodybuilders really winning perhaps in like their early 30s, right? But anyways, it was like 4 sets of incline dumbbell chest press. The last one was with like force reps pass failure, followed by 4 sets of incline dumbbell flies, and
Mm-hmm.
then doing some cable flies, sets of 20 with like 10 push-ups in between each set and like 30-second
Holy shit.
rest. And I was explaining why that's just not necessary. I was explaining why there's a lot of redundancy. Like for a general person trying to build muscle, even optimally, I would never do a dumbbell incline chest press followed by a dumbbell incline fly. It's the same angle. It's the same muscle fibers. They're already fatigued. It's probably better to choose a slightly different angle. And I was explaining all these things. And people in the comments are just like, well, you don't look like that guy. I'm like, whatever, man. Like,
I don't.
yeah,
I know.
I don't, but
I
that
don't.
doesn't take away from the fact that this is ineffective training, you know?
Yeah.
I won't say ineffective because there's some effectiveness to it, but it's redundant. It's not necessary.
Yeah, it's not the best use of your time. So I've heard you speaking a little bit about bulking. And I have my thoughts because, again, we're not talking here about anybody trying to compete at the Olympia. We're not talking about anybody who is, even if somebody wants to believe that they are ready. And it's funny because I get people telling me all the time, oh, you can step on the stage at any time. And I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm telling you, I can't. I can't. I know what it takes to get there and I ain't doing it. And this whole idea, and I think it's very prevalent with, I don't mean this in any disrespect of a lot of male coaches, like the bro coaches, that is like, oh, let's bulk. And I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I wanted to hear
Yeah,
how you go on about the whole concept of bulking, especially for a female.
sure. So is bulking necessary? No, it's not necessary, but we can't deny that like food can be a tool to help you perform better in the gym, lift more weight, which can result in more muscle growth. Now, I think the issue where people go wrong with bulking is like they use it as an excuse to eat absolutely everything. Oftentimes it's associated with like pretty unhealthy eating behaviors too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to down a massive burger, a large thing of fries, and a milkshake because fuck it, I'm bulking, bro, right? Like that's not good. There's pretty clear evidence, Natalia, that being in a slight calorie surplus is optimal for building muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of caveats here. If you're a complete beginner, this does not matter. This only matters when you get to a point where you can no longer really progress much in the gym or progress at a rate that is satisfactory to you. That's different for everybody. For example, I'm going through a quote unquote bulking phase at the moment. Like nobody would consider that bulking because I'm gaining like a pound to a pound and a half a month,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm doing it very slowly. I had a conversation with Eric Helms, and he said a phrase that I loved. And it's that nutrition is simply permissive for muscle growth, meaning that you need to consume a certain amount of food to build muscle, but eating more than that doesn't necessarily result in any more muscle growth.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes people gain a pound or 2 pounds a week, and you would be gaining the exact same amount of muscle if you were gaining like a quarter of a pound to maybe half a pound on the high end per week.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, this is only necessary if you've gotten to a point where you're not really seeing much progress in the gym. You really want to improve muscle mass. So I do think bulking can be beneficial in certain contexts, just not the way that it's traditionally done. The last thing I'll say here is, like I said, I've been training for about 15 years now. And I used to go through bulking cutting phases that were really short because I would eat too much and then get
Mm-hmm.
fat and then eat like too little and lose all the weight, but also not really see much progression in muscle because, as you and I know, you don't build a lot of muscle in 3 months,
No.
right? So if you're going to be in a gaining phase / bulking phase, you should be doing it for at least 9 to 12 months in a
Yeah.
dedicated fashion. And the first time I did that correctly, Natalia, which was probably like 6 to 8 months before we had our first son to 6 to 8 months after that. So like a year and a half, I was gaining like a pound to 2 pounds a month. And that's the strongest I ever got and the most muscle I ever built. And I did gain some body fat because you do gain body fat, but it wasn't overwhelming by any means, right? So it depends on how you do it.
And do you think that there is also, for example, you are a lean guy?
Mhm.
Because I see this, someone who is already like, let's say 10, 15 pounds to spare. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to go into bulking because I want to build. And my rationale, especially for women, because and this is me going a bit of a tangent, I think that we can all look at people in a vacuum, especially women. For example, you gained 15 pounds. It is much different. And you were what, 6'4"?
Yeah. It's very different. Yeah.
It's much different than we have like a 5'2" woman putting
Yeah.
on 15 pounds, which for a dude to get big, it's not as much of a concern as for a woman who normally wears a lot more fitted clothes, and it can impact even like her ability to do her job, to show up. Because we've had that with attorneys. She's like, I don't fit in my suits because this person that I was working with put me to bulk. That's actually something that happened with somebody that recently signed up. She gained 20 plus pounds in 4 months. And then she was like, none of my clothes fit. I didn't want to leave my house. So what is the
Yeah.
cost benefit of it? I think is something that needs to be kept in mind. But whenever we're talking about more general population, that it is unlikely to be as lean as you are, even though they want to believe that they are like, and I mean this in the most respectful way, but you're not there yet. Is bulking necessary?
No, not at all. I was going to say, because you were mentioning earlier, like, let's say it's even a guy that has 10 or 15 pounds to spare. Like the context matters. The context that you gave now, like general population just starting, matters, because I would say, should somebody cut or gain weight? It really depends on your comfort with body fat, right? Because like some people feel comfortable putting on more body fat, like whatever, your prerogative. And for example, Natalia, like if I started where I am now and I train super hard and over the next year I gain 10 pounds, or let's say I gain 15 or 20 pounds and I have like 10 to 15 pounds of body fat, it would also not be fair to say that like I don't have to bulk anymore if I wanted to continue building muscle. Because since I've been training hard the whole time and gaining weight the whole time, well, if I go into a cut, I'm most definitely going to get weaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if I continue training intensely. So in that circumstance where it's a trained athlete, it really depends on what the person's goal is and comfort level with building body fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, hey, I could be 20 pounds overweight. I don't really care. And I just want to be really strong. And that's perfectly fine. But for the general population, like, no, completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
100%.
I recently did a reaction video. I'm not as good at reaction videos as you, by the way. I don't know how you do it. It took me like 3 days to figure out how to do that. And it was still mediocre. But anyway, of Kim Kardashian saying that she gained 16 pounds. I don't know if you saw
I
this
saw
video.
this.
Of
Mhm.
targeted. It was just on her legs, 16 pounds in 6 months. So can you walk us through what can someone, especially a female, can realistically expect a rate of muscle growth to be?
Oh man, that's a really hard one. I think the guidelines that you provided in that video are pretty effective. I think you said maybe like 10 pounds of muscle or so in your first year or something like that. The thing is, it depends so much, Natalia. It's so hard. I've been asked this question so many times and I always have such a hard time answering it because literally one person might be able to build 3 times the amount of muscle as somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I have such a hard time answering that question. I usually defer to saying like, if you're making progress, that's really what matters.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach this question? I really don't know how to answer this question.
So the more recent data that I have seen talks about women's ability to build muscle being fairly close to men. The
Sure.
difference is kind of like the starting point that
Sure.
men normally start with a little bit more. What I have seen is women being capped at about 20, 25 pounds. That's kind of where the max total in a lifetime, give and take, naturally, assuming that it is a natural, like
Mhm.
no PD or
Sure.
anything, about a pound to somebody who is beginner but thinks is intermediate, half a pound to a pound per month,
Yeah.
roughly what we're looking at. And then if we're looking at someone who has, more significant experience, about a quarter pound per month, give and take, I think that
Yeah.
is normally a safe number that I go with.
Yeah. The difficult part, Natalia, is that one, I'm not up to date with data on this stuff at all. But two is like, okay, so muscle mass is reported as lean mass in research. And lean mass doesn't necessarily just mean new muscle mass, new contractile tissue, right? Because when we start training, we also increase muscle volume, even if there's not necessarily any new actual contractile proteins, more muscle. Because one of the adaptations to training is your ability to store more glycogen and have more glucose in the muscle. And so you have more water in the muscle as well. You and I both know, like, I took 3 weeks off from the gym because I was sick. And then I took a week trip with my family and I felt deflated. Like,
Yeah.
objectively, I know I haven't lost 5 pounds of muscle mass because we know how much muscle is 5 pounds. But like my muscle volume is substantially lower because there's not as much water, there's not as much glycogen being stored. Like you lose those adaptations. So it's like, when they say a pound of muscle in a month for a beginner, I'm almost certain that it has to be with the caveat of the adaptation of increasing muscle volume with water as well. Because if you look at a pound steak, that's a lot, you know?
So what you're saying is that this is already even like an overestimation, like based on your experience and what the available data and how it is not as precise. So what you're saying is that even the 1 pound is already a quote unquote overestimation because we're not looking just at new muscle, we're looking at old muscle that got swole, bro.
Yeah, or even just like muscle volume, right? Like
Yeah.
people ask this question a lot. And then my thought always goes to like, how does the answer affect your approach in any way? Because let's say it's a pound, let's say it's 10 pounds in a month, let's say it's 0.1 pounds in a month. Like you still have to take the same exact approach, right? So that's where I come back to as well. Because I feel like people try to have these standards and then they measure their progress based off that standard. It's like, oh, I didn't build a pound of muscle this month, or I didn't put on 15 pounds of muscle this year. Like I'm not doing things as well as I could. And it creates sometimes these expectations that I think cause more harm than good.
Communication is a beautiful thing because I'm asking this question with a scenario that I have in my mind of something that happened recently.
Okay.
And you're giving your answer based on like the
My
scenario that you, yes,
yeah.
I think that is so interesting because, for example, the reason I'm asking this is because I think, especially with the abundance of information on the internet, some people who are not experts are becoming a little bit out of touch with where their actual expertise lies. And
Hmm.
because they're very smart in their career, they're like, I can figure that out. So the reason I'm saying this is because obviously there is so much data that we can have to be objective. Even if you're getting in-body scan and things like that, all those things can be slightly skewed and not be as accurate as they should to describe body fat and muscle mass. But I was talking with somebody recently, and this is someone that is like 230 pounds, 220 pounds. Okay. A female, about 5'3". And I had spoken with her previously and about 8 months ago. And 8 months to the time that I spoke with her again, she had gained 15 pounds. Again, reminding that it is someone that is about a lot of adipose tissue. She was trying to convince me because she had convinced herself that she had gained 15 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, no. I mean,
But do you see like the conversation that I had that made me ask this question is coming from this scenario because that's something that I come across a lot.
yeah, impossible. And I say impossible even because what was the time frame?
Like 9 months, 8 months.
Let's say you could build 15 pounds of muscle in that time. You never build exclusively muscle. She was in a surplus. She gained weight. It's never just muscle. It's usually a good amount of body fat as well. That's the thing. People are like, I put on 10 pounds of muscle. It's like, no, at least half of it is fat. Like you don't, like the vast majority of it is not muscle mass unless you're a complete beginner, right? Like, and you have a really good propensity for building muscle as well. If you put on 10 pounds over a year or something and like half is muscle, half is fat, that's really great.
Yeah. But do you see what I'm saying? Like you're speaking with more sane people. And I had a few conversations that threw me for a loop. And I'm like, what the hell did I just hear? Like, what is happening?
I've literally had conversations with clients of like, I heard you can build this much muscle in a year and I didn't do that. So like, what's going on? It's like, dude, look at your before and after in a year. You've made awesome progress. Like stop comparing yourself to that. You know, that was my perspective of the question.
Yeah. It's so funny how we kind of like, whenever we're asking questions in scenarios like this, we have like a frame that triggered us to ask that question. So very interesting.
Yeah.
Joey, is there anything that I didn't ask you today that you think would be important to touch on?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot
I
of
like
ground.
the topics that we covered here because I often talk about the same boring stuff on my podcast. So I like having conversations.
I love it. So can you tell people where they can find a little bit more about you, about your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. So on all social media, it's Dr. Joey Muñoz with a dot after the DR. And then my podcast is the Dr. Joey Muñoz Show because I'm not that creative. Funny story behind that. I spent like a week, Nathalia, trying to figure out names. And I started my podcast kind of like when ChatGPT first launched. And I was like, my podcast is about this. Like, what are good titles? And like, I couldn't land on anything. I was like, whatever, I'll just use my name. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, just the Dr. Joey Muñoz Show. And yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
That's awesome. And one last question.
Yeah.
If you could eat just one thing for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Steak.
Steak?
Yeah.
He didn't even have to like flinch. He went straight to steak.
Anybody that knows me, you could ask that question. That's what I would eat. Steak or just like lobster? Like, I just like fancy stuff. Really nice ribeyes or like really nice lobster, stuff like that. Like, I could just eat that all day, every day.
Are you a steak snob? My husband is
Yes.
such a steak snob.
Yes.
Oh, like he has a whole process. He's a ribeye guy too.
It's not a process, Natalia. It is the process you must follow. You gotta put salt on your steak and let it dry, then you gotta pat it dry so it gets a nice crust. You cannot cut the steak for at least 10 minutes after it's done. You
Yes!
have to do this. And if you really wanna take it to the next level, what you do is you get a drying rack, like for like cookies, where the air can flow under and over the steak, and you put that on top of another rack, like a baking rack. You salt your steaks and you put them in the fridge for 24 hours. Draws out all the moisture. You get the best steaks in the world, I promise.
I don't know how to cook steak. Like, honestly, I either overcook or undercook. It's terrible. Roger, that's his wheelhouse. Joey, thank you so much for your time. I'm super excited to have you here, and I hope your family stays well, especially with a newborn baby, and that your sleep doesn't get so interrupted. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.